in a move that's sending shockwaves through environmental and tribal communities. Per U.S. News, President Trump has pulled the U.S. out of a landmark agreement aimed at saving the Columbia River's dying salmon runs. If the salmon population in the Columbia River isn't recovered, several serious ecological, cultural, legal, and economic consequences could follow. 1. Species collapse and extinction. Several salmon and steelhead runs are already endangered or threatened. Ending the agreement would likely slow or halt habitat restoration, dam modifications, or potential dam removals. Some runs, especially in the Snake River Basin, could go extinct within decades, possibly sooner. 2. Cultural destruction for indigenous tribes. Salmon are sacred to many Columbia Basin tribes, including the Nez Perce, Yakima, Umatilla, and Warm Springs. They're tied to treaty rights, which guarantee tribes the ability to fish in traditional areas. If salmon disappear, it represents a broken promise by the U.S. government and a loss of cultural identity, food sovereignty, and spiritual connection for tribal nations. 3. Ecosystem breakdown. Salmon are a keystone species. When they return to spawn and die, they provide critical nutrients for entire ecosystems, from bears and eagles to trees and insects. Their decline means less food for predators, weaker forests, and a collapse of interconnected riverine ecosystems. 4. Legal and political fallout. Tribes have sued successfully in the past to enforce salmon protections under treaties. If the federal government backtracks on a recovery deal, it could trigger major legal battles, public protests, and even international disputes with Canada, where some salmon runs historically extended. 5. Energy versus environment conflict escalates. Ending salmon recovery efforts may preserve cheap hydroelectric power and agricultural irrigation, but would worsen climate-driven river temperature rises, salmon mortality in dams and reservoirs, public pressure to rethink the role of aging hydro infrastructure. It would pit rural energy and farming interests against tribes, scientists, and environmentalists in a worsening fight. In summary, if the salmon population isn't recovered, and federal restoration plans are scrapped, the region could face extinctions of native salmon runs, violation of indigenous treaty rights, environmental degradation, legal and political conflict, a lasting stain on U.S. ecological and cultural responsibility. What could happen if salmon became extinct? The Columbia River and its tributaries once supported one of the greatest salmon runs in the world. However, the construction of large hydroelectric dams, particularly Grand Coulee Dam and Bonneville Dam, had profound effects on salmon populations, ecosystems, and indigenous communities. Before the 20th century, the Columbia River Basin saw millions of salmon, Chinook, coho, sockeye, and others, migrating upriver annually to spawn. These fish were not only ecologically crucial, but also central to the culture, economy, and sustenance of indigenous tribes, such as the Yakima, Nez Perce, Umatilla, and Warm Springs. Bonneville Dam, completed 1938. Location: on the lower Columbia River between Oregon and Washington. Purpose: power generation, navigation, and flood control. Impact: it included fish ladders, an early attempt at allowing salmon to bypass the dam. Still, it obstructed part of the migration route and contributed to declines in salmon numbers. Set a precedent for future dams on the river. Grand Coulee Dam, completed 1942. Location: in north-central Washington. Purpose: power generation, irrigation, especially via the Columbia Basin Project. Impact: it completely blocked fish passage. No ladders or bypasses were built. Salmon could no longer reach the upper Columbia River and its tributaries in Canada, eliminating access to about 1,100 miles of historic spawning habitat. This caused the extinction of certain salmon runs in the upper basin,